The state of Montana is preparing to contract for care of discharged Warm Spring patients and state inmates. I'm joined by Mara Silvers. Mara, you recently broke news about this new contract. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So, what is the point in this contract and what's the need for it?
So, oftentimes when patients go to the Montana State Hospital and are there for a long time, or the Montana State Prison and are there for a long time, they end up at some point needing to be discharged because they need a lower level of care. Or in the case of Montana State Prison inmates, they are medically eligible for parole after they've served long sentences. And it's difficult for the state to often find local providers who are willing to take those patients and inmates, or sometimes providers want to but don't have the resources or the staff. So oftentimes there are patients who could be better suited in other settings, but those locations are difficult to find.
Great. Can you sum up how this contract will work? Let's break it down a little bit.
Well, there's really not a lot known at this point. So the state issued a two-page letter notifying its intent to contract with iCare Management, LLC, which is a Connecticut-based company that owns several nursing homes on the East Coast, to basically care for these patients. And the reason why that's unusual is because typically when the state is interested in bringing in an outside vendor to do some type of care, they issue what's called a request for proposals or an RFP. So multiple different types of vendors can weigh in and have a competition and a competitive bidding process to get that contract. But in this situation, it's what's called a sole source contract with iCare Management. And the state can do that in certain situations, but typically not it's not typical to see something like that in this situation. So unless another bidder comes in and decides to make a competitive bid before the middle of October, iCare Management will get this contract. And we really don't know how long it's for, how much it will cost, or even where in Montana this could operate.
Okay. And then how are people reacting to this so far?
There has been a bit of surprise about exactly that sole source contract issue that I mentioned. Many sources who are used to seeing operations at the state hospital and the state prison are just wondering why this wasn't opened up for a competitive bidding process, especially for something that will likely be so expensive and dealing with some of the most medically vulnerable patients who are currently in state care. The one organization that weighed in on this was Disability Rights Montana, which is the federally appointed watchdog group for people with disabilities who are in state facilities. And they really raised a couple of issues about what they said was a lack of transparency on how this bidding process unfolded.
And then tell me about what happened after you published this original article.
On Tuesday morning, we published what we had, which was this two-page letter and the noticing of intent to sole source with iCare Management. And shortly after we published, the state let us know that they were going to be publishing an updated letter that explicitly said that this care did need to happen in Montana. They had gotten a couple of questions about that because this is a Connecticut-based company and all of the facilities that this company owns are on the East Coast. And so the updated letter now does specify that the care at this facility must be provided in Montana. But as far as I am aware, iCare Management does not currently own or lease any space in Montana. And so it's unclear if they do get this contract exactly where the physical location or physical locations could be to care for these patients and inmates.
All right, Mara, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to hearing what comes out of this.
Thanks for having me.